So in my last Hackle video, we blended this fiber, sort of a dual color side by side on the Hackle, and I've spun a little bit of it. It is really, really fun. It comes out, I love how the color just is so unpredictable when you spin it. In the video, I mentioned a technique that I do, or at least I call sandwiching, where I layer different fibers this way versus side by side, which I did in the first video. So I'm going to pick some fiber and we're going to give that a go, and then I thought it would be fun if I do a side-by-side comparison of both the sandwiched fiber versus the side-by-side blended fiber. And I thought about doing the same colors, but honestly people, I will be so bored if I do that, so I'm going to pick something completely different, and hopefully it will give us enough of an idea of how the two blend together. And then the next stage would be to show you how I use my drum carder. I do feel like I use it somewhat unconventionally in some areas, so that will be an upcoming video as well. So join me. I'd love to have you on this journey of sandwich blending on a Hackle. All right, here's the fiber that I pulled for this sandwiching on a Hackle fiber blending experiment. I had this pre-dyed, I think this is spruce. It's really pretty. It's like a green almost with a blue undertone, and some teal merino, and some various silks that I thought might be a really good contrast where this is so dark. I also have a little bit of Angora rabbit fiber that I dyed, as well as this is Firestar. It's much like, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. This is Firestar, this is Angelina. So Firestar is also a nylon product similar to Angelina that adds some shimmer to your projects. I do find the Angelina more sparkly. So, and this is Sari Silk, you might recognize if you ever buy that product. I'm not sure if I'm going to use all of this, but I got wise to choosing what I wanted to use first for the video. The last one I had a whole bunch of stuff, and then I can't think on my feet and film at the same time, people. So now I have sort of a colorway to kind of go with, and well, I'm going to set up the Hackle and let's get started on blending. Okay, here I've got my Hackle here all set up. I always keep the top on when I'm not using it so that nobody gets injured, including the cats. And we're going to start with that spruce color to begin with that I had hand dyed. A lot of these fibers, they're dyed to soak up extra dye in the dye pot. And I'm noticing this seems slightly felted, so it might even be a bit of an over dye. Say if the first color wasn't quite intense enough, so then I would plunk it back in. I'd have to go check my notes. But this is an example of how using a Hackle is great if you have any fiber that's slightly felted. It gets rid of that issue, and then you can keep on working. Nobody wants to spin slightly felted fiber. It's no fun. So now let's take that teal color and sandwiching a little bit of that on top. I'm just trying to decide here what color I want to use next. This is a really fun process to just go and feel your way through it as you add the color on. And you have to decide how thick you want each layer in your sandwich. For certain things, I'm going to go heavier, such as like in the spruce, but the silks, we want to go a little lighter, and anything like a texture, like a sari silk, even lighter than that. Okay, let's apply some of this green silk as our next layer in this sandwich. Oh yeah, that's a little too thick, so I'm just going to remove a bit and move it on down on the Hackle. I like to use the analogy that blending color on a Hackle is a lot like painting with a paintbrush. So you have to decide how heavy or light of a hand you want in between each color. I'm going to go back and add in more of that spruce color, layering that on top of that pale green. Now let's change it up and really give it a pop of color now and use this purpley silk. This is going to start to get very interesting as we add more color to the hackle. I find this really fun. I prefer this even over my drum carder. I feel like I have more control over how the color is placed with the hackle this way. Now that teal again. Reaching over and deciding, okay, so time for a little bit of this Angora rabbit fiber. This is raw, dyed raw, so it would have been harvested from the little bunnies. The great thing with Angora is they can just pick it from the bunny. It doesn't harm them at all. But since this is not combed, it is a bit more chunkier. So I want to make sure to lay it down very lightly. And I don't know if you've ever used Angora. It tends to bloom up a lot. So I like it as to add it in, but I don't like to have too much. Or you get kind of those like a spiky hair kind of look that comes out in it. Oh, that's pretty. Really muted it down. All right, back to our spruce. So hopefully watching me in this process isn't going to be too boring. I want to go at least over one layer with it so you can kind of get an idea of what I do. Let's add some sparkle now. I'm reaching for the Angelina fiber. I don't know if you've ever used Angelina fiber. It's a really fascinating nylon product that's sparkly, so it adds that sparkle to products. To your yarns. I know some people don't like to use it. They like to keep everything natural, or they don't like how it kind of sort of sticks up and makes a texture. I personally like to use it once in a while. I think I'll go back and add some more of that teal on top of this. Okay, I feel like adding a little bit more of that Angora rabbit fiber, and I'm just giving a different view here so you can see how I really gently paint it on. Not really painting it on, obviously, but just the term I like to use as an analogy of kissing that rabbit fiber on there. I hand dyed this fiber. It's not a natural color, but it is a really pretty caramelly brown color. Time for some more pop of color with that purple silk. Now, if you don't like texture or uneven textures in your yarn, you're going to want to do this with top only, and it will keep your yarn really smooth. I like texture in my yarn and variation, but I can appreciate why other people would not. In fact, I'm still contemplating if I'm going to add that sari silk in there. Here's some darker green. Wow, that really changes the color, doesn't it, as we go. And some more Angelina. Make it nice and sparkly. Yes, we're saying the sari silk pieces. If you've ever seen this, this is waste product from the manufacturing of saris. So I love the idea that it's a recycled product, but it is very textured. So if you don't want that kind of lumps and bumps, even though it is a beautiful silk feel in your yarn, your end result, you don't want to blend it into your fiber. Just go giving another pass again with that spruce and teal. So you can see that it's an interesting process back and forth, back and forth. And you could do this chunkier if you wanted. Okay, here's the sari silk. So you see what I mean about how it's quite textured and kind of goes every which way. I really enjoy putting this in some of my yarn. So this will be really fun to spin. So just like the Angora fiber, I'm trying to kiss it on there very gently, not too much. Make sure it's nice and evenly spread out. Feeling like a little bit more of that purple. It's really interesting, isn't it, how that color changes as you add the different layers. It's kind of sort of dark and moody, then muted, and then the pop of color on top, the sparkle. If you like to play with color and texture, this is a really fun process to do. Not to mention you get a really unique one-of-a-kind yarn, and how can you go wrong with that? Some more of that teal on top. The spruce again. So we're going to fill the hackle with this fiber about 1/2 to 3/4 of the way full. I find anything more than that, you're not going to be able to pull it off anyway. The fibers tend to compact down, and then you get a lot of shorter pieces, which I do pull off and spin after, which I'll show you when I pull with the Diz, or maybe you're aware from watching my other hackle video. But I haven't found a benefit with overfilling the hackle. I've often thought maybe I should get two, put them side by side, or find a longer one so I can make a longer roving. But to be honest, this is completely fine. I like my little mini rovings that I pull off with this little hackle here. Suits me just fine. Some more sparkle. What's great with Angelina is if you buy a bag of this, a little bit goes a long way. I bought my bags of Angelina fibers of different colors that I wanted like years ago, and they just keep going and going. So it's a very good investment that way. So I am going to continue on in this manner until we're about halfway full, and then we will go ahead and pull off a roving with the Diz. Okay, time to Diz off a roving here from the hackle. And here you see my handy dandy Diz and a pulling tool. I always use this larger hole, but it does have 2 other sizes if you want smaller roving. And it is quite amazing how much fiber you can get through this little hole. Now I have a really bad shoulder that bothers me every so often, so I am going to pull this by alternating hands and being very careful. It does look like I'm pulling really hard here, but I'm actually not. It's a firm and even pressure, and the slower you go, the easier it is. I am guilty of being very impatient with things, pulling too hard, and then the roving breaks, and like, oh, okay, that was pointless. If you go slow with firm but gentle pressure is the best way to describe it. And normally I would guide the Diz with one hand and pull with the other, but because that right shoulder gets exacerbated from an old injury, I was actually hit by a car when I was younger, so spinning and other such things exacerbated. I want to be really careful, so I'm going to alternate hands here. I wanted to bring up that option because I know a lot of us do have injuries and disabilities, but that shouldn't stop you from doing what you want. The repetitive motion that happens with fiber work can be taxing on the body sometimes. So find ways to modify it that work for you. Okay, so we're now moving that roving back towards the direction we just came. And I usually can just get 2 passes, and that's about it. And then I just pull the rest off by hand. You see how short the fibers are that are left behind there after the second pass. as I get to the end again. Almost got it. I do try to tease as much fiber out there. It broke. That's it. So that's as long as we're going to get for this little mini roving. Cute little ball of fluff. See, that is how the colors blended. Pretty interesting. I can't wait to spin that. So with the fiber that's left here, I'm just going to line it up by hand a little bit and start pulling it. This is perfectly spinnable. There is absolutely nothing wrong with this fiber. I'm just going to now just make bunches, kind of that looks like a little mini bat with what's left. This can get a little taxing on the hands if you're like me and have some wrist issues. So if you're the same way, go slow, listen to your body, take breaks if you have to. So you're still going to be left with some teeny tiny short bits. And as this is top and silk and all that good stuff, I don't waste this. I'm actually going to just keep this to be put in another process that I do on my drum carder. So there's a little mini bat, as I call it, completely spinnable. The fibers are all lined up in the same direction. You could run it through another time if you wanted to blend it again. I'm not going to do that this time because I really want it to match up with the roving that I just pulled. So here's the pieces that are left, and I'm just going to set this aside and use it. Oops. Another process that I do with my drum carder. I'll show that in another video. Here is the completed blended fiber. I did this over a couple of days because I didn't want to exacerbate my shoulder, although I admit when I get into it I really don't want to stop because I love seeing that color blended together. And although I do use the same products obviously in the fiber blending, I don't actually do the same order. I think I would get bored doing that, so I may have to switch this up a little bit to make sure there's a good mix. So I'm just sort of moving these around, kind of going, how do I want to arrange this when I spin it? But anywho, just want to point out with this guy here, I decided to overload the hackle to give an example of what happens. And I don't find I can pull a bigger roving when I overload the hackle. So you can see my mini bat is kind of not so mini there. I end up usually with the same amount of fiber to pull off. And you see the rovings are the same size. So there really isn't any benefit to overloading your hackle. Basically, this is because the more fiber you add, the more compacted down it gets and the harder it is to pull off. And this is my quote-unquote waste product, which I'm not going to treat as waste product. We're going to set that aside for a drum carder project later. So that is my bounty of blended fiber that we will spin in an upcoming video. So that's sandwich blending on a hackle, as I like to call it. I love the really interesting texture and blending that you get with this process. Look at this sparkle. If that's too much texture for you, I a lot of times will pair this with something plain. So say if I get like a plain spruce ply and a singles, I should say, and then I would ply it to this. But I've also done 2 and 3 ply with my crazy blending, and you make some really, really fun, unique yarns that way. If you're like me who likes to play with color and texture, and that's sort of your philosophy for spinning, then it's perfect. And again, I can't stress enough that if you want to have success using a hackle, you don't want to load your hackle too much. I mean, listen, I have done this when I first got it. Let's just fill the thing to the top till it's brimming. And because those fibers compact, it is really hard to pull off. So not only is it hard on your body, you will probably find you'll have a lot left over that you can't pull through the roving anyway. So take your time, be gentle with your body, don't overload it. Now, mind you, if you're out there and you use a hackle and you figured out a way where you can fill that really full and still pull a huge roving, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. This is just my technique. No one taught me how to use these tools. I taught myself and developed my own ways of doing it. Now, I'm not saying that I'm the only my way is unique and different. I'm sure it's not, but it's all that I know. And I'm hoping with my trial and error, I can share that with all of you and you get something out of it going forward. But I'm always wanting to encourage people to try new things, try to develop your own way, and just be happy with how you do it, even though it may not be the technical way or the proper way to do things. As long as you're having fun with it, then that's all that matters. I'll show you too, because I started spinning that fiber from the first hackle video. Remember this one with the dual color? And this is what it looks like on the bobbin so far. So it's a very obvious two color. So this is intriguing. I'm not sure what to do with it yet, and I still have some fiber to go. There isn't a ton of this, so I probably will pair it with something else, but again, for an upcoming video. If that is sort of interests you, then join me along with that process. So that's how I blend fiber on a hackle, sandwich style as I like to call it, layering a lot of different fibers and textures. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you get something out of it. Always love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time.